Vladimir Putin says bilateral relations between Russia and China have now reached an unprecedented level. The Russian president is on a two-day state visit just a week after Donald Trump was in Beijing. The trip is timed with the 25th anniversary of their landmark friendship treaty. Putin and Xi are expected to sign dozens of new agreements on Wednesday. Xi says it's imperative to stop the fighting in the Middle East, as he warned the world is in danger of reversing into the law of the jungle. Well, we have correspondents covering this visit from Russia and China. In a moment, we'll get the view from Moscow with Yuila Shapovalova. First, let's get the latest from Katrina Yu, who is live in Beijing. Katrina, we've already heard some punchy remarks from the Chinese president as meetings between the two leaders get underway. Talk us through what we've learned so far.
Well, Vladimir Putin was greeted by quite a lavish military welcome, 21-gun salute, children waving Russian and Chinese flags, actually an identical welcome that Donald Trump received last week. However, entering the Great Hall of the People, and as the two leaders began to sit down for their meeting and gave their opening remarks, it was clear that the atmosphere, the tone of language between these two leaders is markedly different. So President Putin, Vladimir Putin, he started his remarks first with some very familiar language. He says, "We haven't seen each other for a day, but it feels like 3 autumns have passed." He said that the two countries have reached an unprecedented level of ties, represented in a genuine, comprehensive strategic partnership. He noted that the friendship treaty between the two countries had lasted for 25 years and resulted in trade between the two countries ballooning to over $200 billion a year. It was actually worth about $230 billion last year. And he invited Xi Jinping to come to Russia next year, and noting also that that friendship treaty between the two countries has been renewed going forward. Now, Xi Jinping also greeted Putin with also very familiar language. He called him a dear friend. He said that the two sides should continue to assist in each other's development to promote a more just global system. And he said that the two sides had achieved a deepened political trust in a world where there was a danger of reversing into the law of the jungle. He also mentioned the fighting in Iran and says that the fighting must stop in order to reduce the disruption of stability to the global energy supply. So I think from those opening statements from both of these leaders, we do see reflected a genuine friendship, a genuine warmth, a genuine trust that was not there in the meeting between Washington and Beijing last week. And I think much of that closeness is founded upon this shared vision of a more multipolar world, one where the US has less power. And I think certainly those comments about the law of the jungle did refer indirectly to the US and some of the Trump administration's actions over the past year. And now we also see Putin here with a large business and government delegation. They're expected to sign about 40 agreements, another big difference compared to when Trump was here, where no agreements were signed. So more substantial concrete outcomes expected during this visit.
Okay, Katrina, just stand by for us. President Vladimir Putin saying Russia and China's cooperation has enabled both nations to prosper despite Western sanctions on Moscow and global disruptions to energy supplies. Take a listen.
Even against the backdrop of unfavorable external factors, our interaction and economic cooperation demonstrate strong momentum. The driving force of economic cooperation is Russian-Chinese interaction in the energy sector. Amid the crisis in the Middle East, Russia continues to maintain its role as a reliable supplier of resources.
Let's cross to Al Jazeera's Yuila Shapovalova, who joins us live from Moscow. Yulia, so President Xi Jinping rolling out the red carpet for the Russian president. How are people in Russia viewing all this?
Well, yes, indeed. Basically, we're hearing from both sides right now. So these important issues are going to be covered throughout the day today. So, of course, people here are closely following this visit. Many who are involved in businesses with China are waiting for important statements and decisions. Moscow keeps convincing that China is Russia's main geopolitical ally, and there's just a handful of friendly countries left which haven't turned their back on Russia. And these countries are certainly led by China. And people understand that Russia's economy has many problems right now. Prices grow, the budget is in deficit, inflation is high, many businesses collapse. So for them, it's an important step to strengthen economic relations first and foremost. But it's certainly not the groundbreaking visit if we talk about the majority of population here. And for many Russians, it would have become crucial had Vladimir Putin met with Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky, for example. But this visit to China is important, of course, but perceived here as part of Vladimir Putin's working routine.
Okay, many thanks for that. Yulia Shapovalova there for us in Moscow. Let's cross back to Beijing. And Katrina, to what extent, Katrina, do we think that the war in Ukraine will be part of the discussions today between the two leaders?
Well, I think it's highly likely they will discuss the war in Ukraine. Whether or not those comments will be made public is another question. Interestingly, we do know that the war in Ukraine came up during Xi Jinping's discussions with Donald Trump last week, because there have been reports from several White House sources that Xi Jinping actually told Trump that Vladimir Putin may regret his invasion of Ukraine. Now, I have to be clear that those comments have been completely denied by China's foreign ministry as being false. They have even been denied by Donald Trump himself, saying that Xi Jinping did not, in fact, say that. But it does raise the question about what have been the damaging effects of the war. Now, on Russia, it's clear it's been more than 4 years now. Really a big consequential impact on Russia's economy, but also there have been consequences for China. It's been a bit of a liability for Xi Jinping. It's damaged trust between China and Europe, for example, and Xi Jinping has had to walk this diplomatic tightrope of maintaining closeness with Russia, but also distancing himself from its invasion of Ukraine and continually denying that China is propping up Russia's war machine or providing Russia with sanctioned elements to go into Russian weapons. What China has gained, though, from this war in Ukraine is this massive leverage over Russia. Now that Russia is finding itself, as my colleague mentioned, without many friends on the global stage, it is extremely reliant now on China for its energy needs, for its other economic needs, including trade. So I think we will see over the next few hours China really use that leverage to its advantage.
Katrina, many thanks for that. Katrina, you there for us in Beijing.